Hey guys, my name is Abby, and I am a teacher, science teacher in high school. I teach biology, chemistry, and physics. Like everybody else right now, I'm stuck in the house because my state is I'm part of the stay-at-home policy, and I guess we're all kind of just stuck in trying to pull through together during this time. One thing that I've been noticing as I'm like browsing through social media is this concept that I find to be like really pervasive in the news headlines. Well, a lot less so than the coronavirus, but it's this concept that 5G technology is causing. There are fears that it causes things like cancer and all these other ailments of the body. When I was reading through it, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Like, of course, there's going to be conspiracy theorists. There's always conspiracy theorists, and who's willing to run with any kind of idea that there's some ploy to kill off the human population or subpopulation, whether you're black, white, female, male, whatever. And then as I'm reading it, more and more people are jumping on this ship, and then I see that people are like propagating this more through their social media accounts, and there's big name people, big name celebrities who are really propagating this idea and pushing it out there to our people, and really doing a disservice to our public because they're misinforming people about these technologies because of this just like general lack of understanding about the technology itself and what it does and how it interacts with us and how our bodies interact with it. And so like what I really want to do is use basic scientific concepts to try to help understand and disabuse anybody of any misconceptions that they might have about how this technology works and how technology works and how our bodies respond to it whenever we are exposed to it. And so they're really just basic concepts, and I think that most people can understand it. And if you ever took my physics class, then it's something that you may already get. So first, we need to understand, what is 5G technology? Well, 5G technology utilizes a principal concept in physics, and it utilizes waves. And so before we can talk about 5G and the technology and if it's harmful or not, we have to understand what a wave is and what they do. So waves are disturbances in nature, and so what they do is they carry energy. And so waves carry energy from one place to another. And sometimes it's a high amount of energy and sometimes it's a low amount of energy. And the amount of energy that it carries will depend on the amount of energy that it carries really just depends on the source. And so waves that carry a high amount of energy are waves that move much more quickly, and then those that carry lower amounts of waves move much more slowly. And so there's three basic, like, we call them properties of waves. There's the height of the wave, and that's amplitude, and we can think about that in terms of like loudness or brightness. There's another type of wave, a property that we call wavelength. And so wavelength is how long are two waves from each other. So waves, you can think of like this: they're either long or they're short, right? They're really close to each other. So that's the wavelength. And then the last one that has to do with with the waves that we're talking about, the property that we're talking about with energy is the speed of the wave. We call it the frequency. How fast does this move? Do these waves move within a certain distance, right? So waves that move very quickly are waves that have a whole lot of energy, and waves that are moved a lot more slowly are waves that have less energy. So you think about it like a kid. If you have a kid who has a lot of energy, that kid is going to be bouncing off the walls and moving very quickly. If you hype a kid up on, I don't know, let's say coffee, Mountain Dew, and candy and sugar, the kid's gonna be moving everywhere and bouncing off the walls, and they're gonna be like what my mama will say, a bull in a china closet, and they're gonna be bouncing everywhere and all over the place. And what do you want to do with that kid? get them out of the house because they're going to tear something up, right? They're going to cause a lot of just damage in the house. They're bumping into cabinets and lamps and breaking things. And so those kids have lots of energy and they do a lot of damage in confined spaces. Meanwhile, you have kids on the other end of the spectrum who are a lot more docile and a lot more tame, right? Maybe they're hyped up on Ritalin and Adderall, right? So those are the kids with a lot less energy. They're not moving a lot. They're very slow, or they're napping all the time. They're always asleep, or they're laying down all the time and sitting on the couch. Those kids are moving very quickly. They have less energy and therefore they do less damage. You could probably leave those kids at home for a long period of time, come home and nothing is moved because the kid hasn't really moved. They just don't have a lot of energy. And so waves are the same in that if they move very quickly, they have a lot of energy, and waves that have less energy move much more slowly. And so how do we classify the waves that move quickly or slowly? So there's different types of waves. There's sound waves and light waves. And the waves that 5G utilizes is a type of light wave called radio waves. And radio waves are on what we call the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so the electromagnetic spectrum classifies waves based on their frequency or wavelength, depending on what you're looking at. And it can classify those waves based on their frequency. The frequency of a wave is basically the speed of a wave. High energy, fast moving waves are higher frequency waves. Slow moving, low energy waves are low frequency waves. And so if we start off on the low frequency end of the spectrum, our slowest low energy waves are long waves, right? They move very slowly. They don't have a lot of energy. They're not going to really do any damage if they come in contact with you, when they come in contact with you. And then we move up to higher energy waves. The higher energy wave, higher than a long wave, is a radio wave. Radio waves, TV waves, so those are the waves that allow cell towers to communicate to one another in order to get you information from another location. That's how we carry information from one location to another. And we use radio waves, and we usually use those. They're usually emanating from the top of these cell phone towers or radio towers. And so those are slow moving waves, low energy waves, but they move a little bit more quickly. And then we move up to microwaves. Those are faster, but not very fast, relatively speaking, to other waves. So we're moving from there. Now we're going to get faster with infrared waves. Infrared waves, you use infrared light for a lot of times with remote controls, and they communicate to the TV, like turn the TV on or off, and they'll use infrared rays in order for you to turn TVs on and off, which is why if you block the tip of a remote, you're not going to really get the connection to the TV. That wave is being impeded by something like a hand or a cover, something like that, which is covering up the infrared wave. The next one is, after infrared, is light, visible light. The stuff that comes from your lamp or from your fluorescent bulb, or even from the sun. Those are visible light that we can see. That's what gives us color. That's why we can see in color, right? That's everything: red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet, those are the colors. That's visible light. And then after visible light, we get back to invisible light again, in UV rays. UV rays are rays we get from the sun. One of the types of waves we get from the sun, and from like tanning beds and stuff like that. If you're getting your nails done, the UV lamp that they put your nails under for gel to cure. And then after that, we have X-rays, and I guess we're all familiar kind of like with that concept. And then after that, we have gamma rays. Now, where do radio waves fall in line with those? Radio wave, 5G, is a type of radio wave. It's a technology that utilizes radio waves in such a way that it makes that it's more efficient, that it uses radio waves more efficiently to communicate from cell tower to cell tower and from cell tower to cell phone. And so it reduces the amount of impedance and reduces the amount of interruptions, so that you can use data and you can use the talk mechanism on your function more seamlessly, and having less interruptions, you're able to use it much more quickly. And it's supposed to speed it up. It makes it more efficient. It uses radio waves. So again, radio waves are at the one end of the spectrum where they're really, really slow moving waves. And so if they're slow moving waves, are they causing damage? And how do I know what causes damage? Well, that's a good question, right? Just because they're radio waves doesn't mean they don't cause damage, right? Well, not exactly. So the way we understand how waves cause damage is through this concept that we call ionizing radiation. And ionizing radiation basically means that it's a wave with enough energy that's necessary for you to break a bond. And now we're going to get to the biology behind these waves. Okay, we talked about the physics, and now we're going to talk about the biology part. So energy to break bonds. And so why is that important? Well, the most basic fundamental unit of life, of living things, is the cell. The cell is the most basic fundamental unit of life. And the cell gets all of its instructions in order for how it should function in order to maintain proper body processes from DNA. And so DNA is a long molecule, which is basically a bunch of elements that have bound together in such a way that it's able to carry instructions, and is bound together by all these atoms that have come together in order for it to carry out certain instructions, in order for a cell to operate in a certain way, to carry out normal bodily functions that are necessary for everyday life. Okay, so your DNA codes for everything from the color of your eyes to the height that you are, to the saliva in your mouth, all the way to processes that are responsible for bonding between people, and even even functional thought, consciousness, is all because of these biological mechanisms that have come together for us to be able to function in a way that these processes allow us to live a normal basic life, right? A normal life. And so how does ionizing radiation come into play, right? So we're talking about how your DNA is super important in all of these processes. Well, ionizing radiation basically is the amount of energy necessary to break the bonds that hold us together, to break them apart, right? DNA is a long molecule of atoms that are bound together, and ionizing radiation has enough energy to break those bonds apart and cause disruptions in DNA function, and therefore it's not able to function normally. And then it also inhibits the function. It can also inhibit the function of normal cellular processes and biochemical processes that are responsible for normal everyday function. And so for some of you guys who know what I mean by ionizing radiation, or if that sounds kind of familiar, what ionizing radiation really is the amount of energy necessary for a wave to pluck a electron off of a hydrogen atom. And the amount of energy that's necessary is that's necessary for us to break apart a bond or to pluck an electron off of a hydrogen atom is 2.4 times 10 to the 15 hertz. That's the frequency of a wave that is that would be necessary to pluck that electron off or break a bond. So in layman's terms, it's enough energy to mess you up, right? It's enough energy to break bonds and cause problems. And what are some of the waves that actually do that? Well, let's think about it, okay? Unless you have an electromagnetic spectrum in front of you, you're probably not going to know this answer. But the slowest wave, the wave with the least amount of energy that is considered an ionizing radiation, is UV rays. UV rays are faster than visible light. They're just faster than visible light. But guess where you get UV rays from? The sun. You get UV rays from the sun and tanning beds. And what do you notice about people who overuse tanning beds or are always outside in the sun, always tanning, especially if they're fair skinned? They get cancer, melanoma, right? Because what's happening is those high energy waves from the sun that are invisible, that we can't see, UV rays, are ionizing rays. They're really, really high energy waves, and they come through and they break bonds in your DNA and causes mutations that lead to that cell not functioning properly, and ultimately that cell leads to cancer, and it develops and it grows and grows and grows and grows and replicates, and it causes cancer. What else is higher energy than UV rays? Well, the next step higher in energy, the type of wave that's higher in energy, is X-rays. And what do we know about X-rays, right? People who go get X-rays or who are X-ray technicians, they're always wearing what? These little iron aprons they're standing behind an iron shield. And what is it for? It's because exposure to X-rays is exposure to ionizing radiation. And what happens when people are too exposed to it? Well, they are at risk of developing cancer or other illnesses caused by breaking bonds that disrupt cellular processes. And then after that, what is the most ionizing radiation that we see in nature? It's gamma ray radiation. Gamma ray radiation is something we hopefully, prayerfully, you never come into contact with, because, well, developing cancer eventually is probably the least of your concerns when it comes to gamma ray radiation. It's so high in energy that it can disrupt bodily mechanisms or biological processes in such a way that it can alter your life almost immediately upon being exposed to it. And it's really damaging because there's so much energy there. But what are some slower waves? Well, infrared, microwaves, radio waves, and long waves. None of those waves have enough energy to actually cause you any damage. It would be the equivalent of trying to jump to your death by falling off of a parking island. Like, you're just not going to do it, right? It's ridiculous. You just don't have, there's not enough there for it to happen. And so, when people say that 5G, these towers are causing disruptions and stuff like that, what they're not understanding is that the technology that is being utilized is utilizing a physics property that we have been utilizing for over a century now in radio waves, and we've been able to communicate normally without any adverse effects. And so it's not something where people are being exposed to something that's even more dangerous. It's something that we're exposed to every day. And you actually have a higher chance, based on those properties, you have a higher chance of getting, you have a higher chance of getting cancer from the fluorescent light in your bedroom than you would from the radio waves that emanate from your radio or from your cell phone or from your television. And so those are things you shouldn't be worried about or concerned about, because ultimately, there is a scientific explanation that you should be aware of and that you should be enlightened on, right? I always find that people who are skeptical about scientific processes usually have, or scientific concepts usually have, a healthy skepticism. I think a healthy amount of skepticism is what allows us to explore and deepen our understanding of the things that are around us, about natural processes that are around us, and that spurs on innovation. And I think that's what's really healthy. That's what allows our species to continue to do greater and greater things. But what's harmful is when misinformation is spread because of a misunderstanding about those things that we've already learned about. How people can take one concept, misconstrue it, and then propagate it as something else. We've been doing it from throughout human history. We take a concept and then we misconstrue it and we send it to the populace, or we send it to our population, and now our population is brainwashed or don't understand something. And so, like, honestly, it's not something that I think we should be fearful of. It's a concept that is really easily understandable if you understand the processes behind what we're using. 5G is just the name of a technology. We have 4G, 3G, LTE back in the day. You probably don't remember those things, but it's the name of a technology that utilizes a very fundamental basic physics concept in radio waves, and understanding that those waves that people will say, well, how do you know that those waves don't cause damage? Those waves pass through it. So how do you know it's not disrupting something? Don't forget, waves are energy. Waves are energy. They carry energy. And energy is constantly in motion, is constantly in flux. We're constantly absorbing energy and giving off energy. And energy is passing through us, and we're giving off energy, and energy is coming from us. And so it's not something where we should have to concern ourselves. We are always engaging with our environment at all times, even when we're asleep. But we need to know, but it's important for us to understand what is causing us damage and what isn't. The energy that is possibly damaging to us, and the energy that is actually beneficial, or is inert or has no effect on us. And so again, radio waves, not something you should have to be concerned about, because there's just not enough energy that will actually cause us any damage or any harm. So hopefully that will clear up any misconceptions you might have about the technology, 5G technology, that will probably be up and running here in America in about 100 years, when we're all living fine and everything. You can look back on this video and be like, yeah, she was right. And of course I was right, and I know that I am. But I'm assuming if you look down below in the comments, you're going to definitely see that that somebody's going to call me a government troll or something like that, in which case, if you knew how I felt about government, you would not think that at all. But hopefully I made this video just so that we can educate our population, so that we can become better people, make more educated decisions, and be a more informed people, so that we can be a brighter people and pass this information on to our offspring, so that they can understand how their world works around them, and how they engage and interact with their world on a physical and a biological and a chemical level. So guys, hopefully you like the video. If you do, thumbs up and share it. Leave any comments you have down below, and thanks for watching.